everyone. Welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. We're on our side quest right now to take a look at all the Best Picture nominees from 2021, the 2021 films for the 2022 Oscars. My name is Timo. Today I'm joined, of course, by Abram and Tucker, and one special Mr. Reporter guest, Tanner, over there in the corner. He's
round of applause for Tanner Dykstra. So glad we could have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Golf clap.
Applause is not needed, but is much appreciated.
There you go. Thank you, Tanner. Thank you for lightening the visuals of this podcast on this day. Well, on this day, we are going to talk about Belfast from last year, directed by Kenneth Branagh, one of multiple movies that he put out this year. But this is the one that ended up in the Oscar contention. So, what do we think? Do we want to give a little plot synopsis before we dive in? I think, though, before we even do any of that, I wanted to talk about what we talked about last time because we probably should go over that little eensy-weensy bit of housekeeping. If you caught last episode, you'd know we were talking about Coda, the film from Apple TV that then ended up at our number one spot on the list with an average score of 9.0. Three of us were pretty closely knit in our score, and one of us, little Abram there, was a little off in another direction, but
a little off base.
I only really liked the movie.
Yeah, he didn't think it was a masterpiece, but
a cardinal sin.
Yeah. Abram, get into line. You got to toe the right line. If you want to know what we all really thought about the film, though, go watch the review. It's pretty interesting, pretty great film, as it's at number one right now. But where will Belfast end up? Is that gonna scratch the top? Is it gonna go up in the middle, or will it go at the bottom? I don't know. I think we're gonna have to figure out what this film is all about before we do that, though. So, someone want to take that off?
Oh, sure, I'll take it. Belfast takes us back to the ye olde days of I think it's August 1969 in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and we're following a little lad named Kenneth Branagh. I mean, Buddy. His name's Buddy. It's not a secret. This movie is based off of Kenneth Branagh's childhood growing up in Belfast as the 1969 Belfast riots were going on. There is some animosity between Catholics and Protestants, but we have our main character, Buddy, a young boy whose parents are really concerned about, should we stay in Belfast with our family and our community, or should we move out? It's safer for our children that way. And the movie is really a series of childhood antics that are sort of backgrounded by these riots that are happening that oftentimes come to fruition in several key scenes. But by and large, this is like a coming-of-age movie with if I may color this with a bit of opinion, a very charming child lead in the spotlight. And can I just roll right into my thoughts on Belfast?
I don't see why not.
I want Abram to roll into his thoughts instead.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm gonna steal it from Abram. I'm gonna go.
He's gonna override.
Hijacking my hijack.
Oh, yeah, precisely. I think Belfast is really, really quite good. We saw this back in theaters in November, I believe, is when it came out in theaters.
Something like
that. I was like, this is a really fun, good time of a movie, and it looks really great, and all the characters characters are super interesting. All the actors are doing great work, and I'm like, and going into this Watford Quest, I was like, I have an inkling feeling I'm gonna like it less, mostly because there's a lot of negative animosity towards this film online that I've seen. People complaining about the cinematography, the earnestness of it all, yada yada yada. And I think there is some issues people take with the politics, which I myself am not informed on. But nonetheless, I liked it equally as much this time. As I said, I think our main actor Jude Hill as Buddy is really, really charismatic. When you get Jamie Dornan and Katrina Balfe, I believe is how you say her name.
Yeah,
they're both fantastic. Kenneth Branagh behind the camera is obviously handling this movie with a lot of care, as this is based on his childhood. He wrote the movie, obviously. I cannot pronounce the name of the cinematographer, but he did a fantastic job because this movie just consistently has super interesting and engaging shots and cinematography. But I want to hear what you all think.
Wow, so generous of you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for ceding us our opinion. I think it's only right that Abram gets to go next, given that he was robbed.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
Abram was robbed. Let's get a vote down in the comments to how robbed Abram was.
Yes, like this video in solidarity with me, but leave a comment and give us more engagement. Goose the numbers. Yeah, I watched Belfast. I liked it. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about it. I think the movie is, as Tanner was saying, very interesting visually, and I think that carries it in a lot of respects. I think that's sort of just the feel. I'm a huge Van Morrison fan, by the way. My parents always play Van Morrison around the house, so that was awesome. I love the soundtrack. I really love the film visually. I think it's very witty. I think it's very charming. But I don't know if I'm just stupid, but I didn't really get it, I guess. I understand it's a coming of age narrative. I understand the political backdrop, but I'm not sure. Frankly, I don't really know why it didn't connect to me super strongly. I don't know if it's because it feels aimless, intentionally so, but it feels kind of aimless in the way that we're kind of bouncing between vignettes and characters and things. But yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I appreciate the style, and I think the style is what carried me through it. I think it's the perfect length. But it just didn't do a whole lot for me. I felt very neutral towards Belfast when the film ended.
Okay. Tucker?
Yeah, this film is very good. I think that it is one that I totally understand being in all these categories, a lot of technical stuff. The personal story behind Kenneth Branagh writing this and directing this is pretty unique for big-name directors like him to just delve into a very personal project, and you can certainly feel that. I think that this has a handcrafted value that you don't really. I mean, he also did Death in the Nile, which has just come out, which I think Timo can probably attest to, has less of a handcrafted feel and feels like, all right, we got to pick and choose elements that people are going to recognize on screen and cheer for. But this doesn't really follow any established movie paths. And frankly, I think maybe the reason that this didn't connect with you, Abram, and to some extent I'm feeling that as well, even though I think I liked it a little more than you, is this film is very aimless, and not all of its points tied together succinctly. It's got a lot of ideas in the background. Different conflicts between people and groups exist, but aren't resolved necessarily. And whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, we can obviously discuss here. But it does contribute to this feeling very different, and I think it's not incredibly strong because of that, but everything else it does, I think, is unique enough for me to be like, I really enjoy this movie for what it is, for trying something different, for being so gorgeous and well crafted and well acted and very charming. It's a very special movie, but I don't think it's like best of the best.
Yeah, I think for me that this film kind of boils down to this central thematic idea of what does it look like to be a child in the midst of all of this trouble? Like, that what is what, and so for me, when I recognize what that is, what's going on with that, I'm like using that to guide me through my interpretation of the film. And so every time that something kind of strange, or there's lots of comedic moments, and the film doesn't feel super dark to me, which I appreciate. And to me, that's emblematic of it being through this child's eyes. And what is it like to, just be a kid and just be growing up, even when these very like not like kid friendly events are going on. People are like being killed. And the neighbors are turning against each other in this situation. And so for me, I thought that was probably my favorite part of the film, and kind of allows me to just like deflect all criticism that it should be about anything else. I'm very happy with what this film is about and how it's pretty singularly focused on what Buddy's experience of this event is. And I'm glad about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the focus on Buddy is what this movie does best, and it is what it does for like 80% of its runtime. There's a good amount of intercut stories of just the parents talking or just the grandparents talking.
But it's always just barely enough to give you what you need, and then you're back to Buddy.
It's like half a scene length's worth of a conversation, and then you're back to Buddy's perspective. It always shows him in the background taking things in, and I think focusing it through his eyes gives even like this dark backstory kind of a childlike wonder, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that becomes evident when Jamie Dornan and Katrina Balfe are named Ma and Pa in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the same thing goes for his grandparents, Judi Dench
and Pop.
Judi Dench and Ciarán Hinds, I believe is how you pronounce it. But yeah, if we want to talk about Jude Hill as Buddy, as our main character, and his characterization, I think he's fantastic. You guys talked about how, I think Tucker said how it provides a sort of a lighter childhood sort of sheen on these very dark events. And I think that's interesting to think about when Jude Hill as Buddy isn't exactly. He's childish, but in a way that has childlike wonder. But in a lot of other scenes, he is, he's carrying himself and he's carrying on conversations very adult-like. He's thrown witty little jokes in there, and whether or not he recognizes they are because he's a kid, I think it stands as a bit of fleshing him out and making him seem a bit more wizened beyond his years in some ways. But I think the movie also does a great job of reminding you that he is a child in a lot of ways. Whenever he's sort of in scenes where it's as simple a thing as like him not understanding a concept of something, or like the whole thing at the beginning with him trying to like decipher Catholicism versus Protestantism and like what road should we take. He's very very clearly confused, as a child might be when confronted with these concepts for the first time. Or what I think is a very strong scene when his parents at Christmas sort of confront him with the possibility of moving out of Belfast, and he throws a temper tantrum, and he acts very differently from how we see him act in the rest of the film. I think it's really interesting that the film sort of saves those moments and gives you Jude Hill's regular performance for most of the film as well.
I think the whole basis of his character is the performance, and just how convincing it is that he is this realistic little boy. He's like a 10 or 11 or whatever, and just like seeing through his eyes and seeing his facial expressions in different scenes, and just the way he reacts to some things and the way in which he doesn't react to some things. He's like going through the checkpoint, just like, hey, what up? What up, Mr. West? I'll see you later. Like that way that like just like was to me very affecting in his performance, where I'm like, okay, this is really driving home the point that of how he is reacting to this situation in a way that, I don't know, it feels like it feels right for a child to kind of be acting like that. At least the film supports that thought.
Yeah, I think that Jude Hill is very good. But I'm not sure for me that it's his performance that sells the film as much as it is the script. And I think the script is probably the strongest element of Belfast, in my opinion. I think that the ways that it is able to bounce between these tones is a reflection of really good writing.
Sure.
Because I love the little aphorisms of what's like what's mine is yours and what's mine is mine alone, and things like that. They do a great job of, on a dime, flipping between super serious conversations about Pa's back taxes, and we're throwing the dishes, and we Buddy's sneaking around and he sees that happening, but then we're making jokes, and the families together. It manages to like weave like nostalgia into like political horror and these social tensions really well.
Belfast is a horror movie. That's what many have been saying.
but I think actually between the script and the camera work, it does communicate that really well. Like I think the scene as we begin the film, and the riots break out first, and the camera is panning around Buddy, and the world is falling on itself. I think that between the script and the camera, they do a lot of heavy lifting to the point where you could have had the terrible child actor from Mrs. Miniver play Buddy, and I probably wouldn't have cared, because there was a really strong creative direction here that whoever was in front of the camera was going to be in a very good position to begin with.
I think it's so clear that when we're looking at Buddy, we are seeing the world through his eyes, through the way that the camera shoots around him, like those scenes that you were talking about, Abram, where we visually get to see what's going on internally within him.
Yeah.
Especially also because of how he's framed in the film, of almost always with sequences that he's in, which is the vast majority of them, focusing on his face. And I think the reason I disagree to a certain extent, Abram, I think the script and the camera work are the strongest parts of this movie, but the reason I focus on Jude Hill's performance is so much of his reactions to things and seeing his facial expression change and his mouth hang open and his eyes like glimmer in the light of a movie theater. Like, these are performance moments. Like, he has to be given direction of look amazed in this moment, look scared, look sad. And he portrays these emotions in a far more genuine way than I'm used to seeing from actors of his age. Like, he's very young. He's half our age. And I couldn't do that.
Half.
Frankly, I couldn't show that kind
Absolutely
of emotion.
not.
No.
Well, like the shot
I was
where,
an idiot.
Could I do it right now? No, I couldn't
Great
do
point.
it right now.
Probably not.
But the shot where he graduates up to second desk and realizes that what's her name
is now behind him. His crush is behind
his
him.
little crush is now behind him, and you see his like face become crestfallen. You're like, why is he so crestfallen? Like, you see the joy leave his face, and there's a real like a punchline moment to that thing, but it's all comes from this slow motion video of his face, which is shot incredibly crisply, but you see like the light sparkling off his eyes and his little unbalanced teeth smiling at the camera. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting, but I stand corrected, Tucker, because I think you're completely right.
Yeah,
and also he just lucked. That kid fucking lucked out with that gap in his front teeth.
Oh yeah,
that is perfect.
Yeah.
For this role.
Tucker brought up quite a few things that I want to comment on, because there's a lot of elements in this film that I'd like to mention at the very least. Buddy's sort of relationship with film is really interesting in a through line in the movie. Obviously, because he is based on Kenneth Branagh as a child, and Kenneth Branagh, being a very famous director, probably watched a lot of films when he was younger. But I think it's really cool, and stage performances. We get that performance of stage performance of A Christmas Carol which him and his grandmother go to. But we also get Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, whichever the one that is with the one that has the lady who's in the poster from Shawshank Redemption. You know what I'm talking about? It's the
I
60s.
believe it's The Lost World.
Okay, The Lost World.
The one with where it's like, oh, it's educational, it's about dinosaurs, and then it's just bikini-clad women, and funny scene.
But they also watch like Star Trek at home, and I believe we get High Noon and
The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. The High Noon thing is really cool. I'm going to shout this out a second, because they're watching it on the TV, and it's Gary Cooper sort of walking into the sunset at the end as a song plays, and then we cut out to the street, and it's like the lone guard walking the streets of this community with the same song going. It sort of parallels. I just think that's neat.
I think I thought to myself while I was like, ooh, parallelism. Nice.
Yeah.
While I watched that shot.
Parallelogram.
I do have a piece of Jude Hill trivia, but if you guys wanted to talk about the movie thing a second,
we're on the Jude Hill train, or do we want to do movies? I kind of want to hear this trivia. I'm in trivia favor.
Okay. To capture moments of spontaneity, Kenneth Branagh would often secretly roll cameras on the scenes that Jude Hill thought were just rehearsals. Jude eventually began to suspect this was happening, so the crew taped over the red lights on the camera that signaled it was rolling. Many scenes in the finished film were these quote-unquote rehearsals.
Yeah.
Poor sound guy have to always be wondering whether or not you're actually taking and whether you actually need to be recording or not. I suppose if once you realize it's happening, you're like, I'm never recording. I'm hitting that button all the time. That's really interesting. Yeah. I can see how that would work really well, though.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the movie thing a little bit more.
Sure.
Because I feel like maybe part of my disconnect from the films, I think that it just does things sometimes to do them.
Yeah.
I find the use of color in the film to be very perplexing.
Yeah.
I get the escapism of the film and the context of this charged political landscape that's bleak. At least this is how I was reading it.
Yeah,
and
I think
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang becomes an escape. And I get that, but Star Trek is not in color, right?
Right.
We'll cut to a shot of Judi Dench in her glasses, and the reflection of the Christmas Carol is in color. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it looks good, and I don't really know why that had to happen. I feel like there's sequences like this. There's sequences like the big dance number with Ma and Pa, which is fun at the end. But it felt like Kenneth Branagh was really just indulging himself sometimes in sequences and creative choices that to me didn't really add anything and just put another element into the sort of soup of Belfast. And I'm not sure that really worked for me.
I think you're right. I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at the beginning of. There are a lot of ideas in this film, but almost none of them tie in to like the end of the film and the completion, quote unquote, of the character arcs, because most characters in this film don't get an actual arc to complete, and there's not really a villain. I mean, really the only true conflict going on within our main characters is won't they move over to England, where people won't understand them and they'll be gone from their family, and this tension of leaving community and finding a better life, but recognizing how much community has meant to you. These themes are supported and are clearly strung throughout everything, but they're connected to ideas that don't end anywhere. They're bubbles that kind of just float away. So like when you're watching Judi Dench and Jude Law watch A Christmas Carol, and you get these really, I don't even, frankly, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they did it.
Not Jude Law, by the way.
Same thing.
Jude Law. I literally just went to the cast. I was like, Jude Law's in this movie? What?
No, sometimes
you're okay,
errors
Tucker.
are made.
You're okay.
I think that it's very. I personally found that to be very cool visually, but I'm in that moment watching the golden snowflakes go on stage and then black and white in the background. I'm like, this is cool. But what does it mean? Why do these characters need to feel this way? How is this going to tie into the very end? And I do think that you're right. They don't necessarily go anywhere. I don't think that's a terrible thing, but it left me with a few more questions and answers than I would have wanted.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. This maybe gets into is a hint into my closing thoughts, but like usually I do watch movies like that where I'm like, oh, but what does it all mean, Basil? What is this? What is the purpose of this? But in this, I think it's just so endearing, and it cuts right to the heart of a viewer that I just think like Kenneth Branagh thought of the idea to do this, or maybe it was hang on. Maybe it was Harris Zambarlikos, the cinematographer.
Yes, we made him say it finally. Tanner was like, I'm not going to say it.
Maybe it was one of those guys or anybody else on the creative team of this film. But like they had this idea, they executed it, and it looks great. And it's just cool, a cool element of this film that I don't think detracts from it in any way. And of course, it would have added to the film quite a bit if there was a clear intent and purpose in all these choices, but I think that the choices are neat filmically nonetheless.
Yeah, if I'm gonna throw my 2 cents into this whole discussion, to me, we're going media studies reading into it. To me, it is as if the rest of the film is but a memory, and because Kenneth Branagh is so attached to films, and because these pieces of media, whether it's theater or film, are such important like core memory items, and they are remembered explicitly as being in color. They are shown in this film as in color, whereas the rest of it isn't necessarily like a pictorial representation of what happened, but rather the memory reconstruction, and thus it is in black and white because you don't remember all of the details of what is really going on. So there is my take on the black and white and the color.
Kenneth Branagh cannot remember the color of his grandmother's skin.
Who's to say, really?
Timo, I actually not only followed that because I too am a liberal arts college student, but because I think that actually makes a lot of sense. But I
think there's also just the pure aesthetics to it. I think the black and white really enhances the cinematography. You can just do more creative stuff with black and white than color film, I think, especially in a more domestic setting like this. But continue, please.
No, I agree. I just don't necessarily. For me, if we're going to think about the best pictures, I want there to be a clearer intent behind the choices being made.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because
it's a stretch, my theory.
I think your theory does work because it actually leads into another kind of criticism I have of the film. Because we talk about there being no central villain, but there really actually is this, if we return to the Protestant Christian thing, the friend of Pa's who is kind of forcing him to it's kind of ambiguous as to whether he wants protection money, whether he wants Pa to also go and riot in the Christian areas and loot and be violent or whatever. But there is a tension there. But the tension kind of comes to a head in what feels like a very rushed standoff in which a perfectly thrown brick knocks the gun out of the hand at just the right second. There are moments here that do feel like Kenneth Branagh in a rosy sense retelling his childhood, which does work to the ethos of the film. But I don't know if it works to the creation of stakes for the audience because I never really felt a real sense of stake in the movie. And for a 90-minute, it's fun. It feels good to watch. The characters are witty. It's homely. It's all this. That works. But in the absence of what feels like more organic tensions and more organic payoffs and setups for things, it ends up feeling hollow when I'm coming out the other side of it.
Sure.
I think that actually comes from the fact that this movie is clearly through the eyes of a child, and maybe, this character, Buddy, doesn't see the bad in things. He sees the joy in these scenarios, and he's scared when things are, when shit's hitting the fan, but after that, it's kind of wiped away from his memory as he tries to focus on the positives, and that does inherently wipe away the stakes. We're never fed, oh, hey, remember, this is happening, and Buddy is very upset about it. Like there isn't a direct emotional impact from the riots on the core characters of the film. Actually, I mean, they're talking about the fact that they should move away, but emotionally they aren't afraid because they're Protestants, so they're living in a Catholic area. So it like paints them in a interesting bubble, but that's never really explored outside of Buddy's connection to his crush and saying that they can still be friends even if they are of different denominations. But so that theme kind of doesn't go anywhere, but that's the theme that would really add stakes and tension to the film if Kenneth Branagh had wanted it to, but he didn't, so it isn't.
To me, I think that if I may here, the Buddy says at one point what he wants or why he wants to stay, and that it's very childlike reasons. He has his friends and he has his crush and he wants to do his moon project, and it's these very and. So, while I think I agree with you, Abram, that the film suffers from a lack of stakes, I think that the Buddy's personal, like his character wants, because he is a child, don't have the necessary elements within them to create big stakes. He doesn't want things that are very, very hard to get or that will cause a lot of issues if he doesn't get them. It's just he wants to be around his friends because he's a kid and he doesn't really understand the like greater implications of everything that's going on around him.
See, I definitely agree on a character level, but I feel like where it gets complicated is that the film does try to integrate perspectives beyond Buddy's to the point where I think you could have drawn a compelling tension between why Buddy wants to stay and why we can't stay that we never quite reach. Yeah. Because we have that whole subplot about the father's taxes and his sort of like connections to these gangsters or whoever they exactly might be. Again, it's kind of ambiguous in the film. But I think that the film sometimes reaches its moments of greatest poignancy when we cut from we're playing knights and dragons and princesses in the streets to the camera is spinning 360 as there are religiously motivated riots happening around him. And when the film is able to straddle that line and show us through Buddy's eyes these tensions, but still saddle the viewer with this understanding beyond Buddy, it reaches its point of maximum impact, I think, and I just don't think that it carries that through to the moments that come to a head in the third act, or even when we see him watch his mom throw plates at his father because he's not been truthful about his financial situation. That never even comes to a moment of, Daddy, why was Mom throwing the plates at you or something, right? I think we still could have built up the stakes without losing the fact that, he doesn't want to leave behind the girl that he's impressing and the places he plays soccer and everything. I think you could have had both and had a more nuanced and thoughtful film in the end.
I think what we're coming down to here is that we're approaching a common quest line, which is saying, man, they had some good ideas in here. If only this movie was longer. And I think that it applies to this movie more than most of that we say that for, because this is only 98 minutes or something like that.
This is probably one of the shortest movies we've watched for this entire series. Yeah.
But I think it absolutely would have served the purpose of the film as well. I mean, obviously, as I said up top, and I want to talk about it a bit more. But maybe this conversation is limited by the limited screen time, is Jamie Dornan and Katarina Balfe, who are both fantastic and have picked up a handful of nominations. Katarina Balfe was obviously a popular snub for the supporting actress category. That nomination instead going to Judi Dench, who I think is good, but she's in it less. She's in it less, and I think is also not as good as Balfe. But yeah, I can see your guys' point about all these things, and I think a lot of what you're saying does hold water. But I think it just comes down to a thing of like, I just really enjoy the moments as they roll over me as an audience member. I can see myself consistently going back to that everlasting love scene where Jamie Dornan sings to Katrina Balfe, and there's this very cutely choreographed little dance number between them. Jamie Dornan actually doing the singing in that scene, by the way. Very talented man, very handsome man. Jamie Dornan, call me. But yeah, I think that Belfast is a very rewatchable film for the reasons that the flaws that you guys have pointed out. I think though it is rewatchable in the sense that it doesn't weigh down this childlike wonder with all of these adult storylines and stuff like that. And that is an issue with the film that I can recognize. But I think ultimately, I prefer to look at this film more as like a heartwarming childhood tale that's occasionally backgrounded by these domestic disputes and political disputes on a larger level.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that is obviously what Kenneth Branagh agrees with, because that's the creative style this film went for. I think maybe the reason why I don't push back on that completely, because I think you're right, but as a Best Picture nominee, I kind of feel like there is there's a moral conundrum, quote unquote, to presenting this story that we aren't used to seeing, with politics and a conflict in the background that is very interesting and could lead to some interesting political themes if pulled out greater, that the thread just is not pulled on, which is fine. But for a Best Picture nominee, I kind of expect there to be more conflict, more conundrum going on in the background. And Abram is right, and I think why I wish that had been gone for more in this film is that is at its best when the worlds are colliding. When you're watching that opening shot, which I think is one of the best shots of this film, if not of the year, with a riot going on in the background and watching his face react to this, and a boom, an explosion goes up like pretty close to him, presumably actually an actual explosion, like that hits you emotionally, and it gets you interested in him, it gets you interested in the conflict. Like, there are these pillars that can work together, but one is dropped for the majority of the film, and that doesn't kill my enjoyment of it, but it leaves me wondering where that goddamn pillar went.
It seems like Kenneth Branagh toyed with the idea of making a more comprehensive film, but instead, in pursuit of a Best Director and perhaps Best Picture Oscar here, decided to go with a more safe, to use a derogatory word, a toothless sort of film that doesn't say a lot, but is a good time.
I think that part of this comes down to Kenneth Branagh, the politics of the film, which I looked into. I was curious because I was like, okay, the Troubles, this thing going on in Northern Ireland. I've heard of it. What's really going on?
The Troubles.
I looked up a little bit about the Troubles. And
that does not sound like
he nailed it. No,
Belfast
he nailed
accent
it. He got it.
It wasn't an Irish accent. It was a different accent. I was trying something else
for no reason.
Yeah. But the Protestant side and the religion sides weren't really they were just the lines that everyone decided to draw upon. But that the Protestant side was the pro-England, English and United Kingdom side. The Unionists and the Roman Catholics, the Irish Catholics, were the Republicans, who were the Irish nationalists.
Yes.
And so
who wanted Northern Ireland to be part of Ireland, correct? And not part of England.
Yeah, correct. And there's all kinds of political aspersions, and this thing was like barely solved and still hangs in the balance today by thin margins. And so to me, the choice to really hone in on Buddy's character and to really just focus on him is out of political safety, because I think that this actually could be a bit of a nasty topic for Branagh to wade into, given the way that it all ended up being resolved back in like the early 2000s, even though this started in late 60s. So it's a long conflict and is really complicated, and I think it actually plays into why the film is like it is.
Yeah, but I think that the conflict sort of serves itself to a few good scenes. Like I said, there's Buddy's conflict, which it kind of also gets dropped about his sort of self-searching insight into like, what does the preacher mean? What does the minister mean when he says there's two roads and stuff like that? Which it also serves a few comedic scenes where Buddy's talking with his friend, that sort of like girl who seems like maybe a year older than him or so, where she's like, you gotta lie to him. They're expecting you to say that you're a Catholic because they think that you're double crossing them. So you have to say that you're a Protestant. And Buddy's like, but I am a Protestant. And she's like, exactly.
That is a great scene.
Yeah. Here's the thing about the movie, I think, because Timo, I think you're right, and I feel like as we talk about this more, I feel like Belfast rings hollower and hollower for me, because the way I don't do this very often because I'm very much a last-minute individual, but I like to have a little bit of time between when I watch a movie and then when I talk about it, because I feel like
if only there was a way to do that.
Time
we'll find it
management's out of the
someday.
question.
Yeah.
When I'm watching the film for the first time, I find myself more enraptured by the experience. And then as I leave a film, I want that long tail. I want what it leaves me thinking about, right? And I think that Belfast has a very short tail, due in part to what you were saying, Tanner, but I think in large part because of what you were saying, Timo. As someone who is illiterate on foreign policy in the modern sense, I have no fucking idea what happened in Ireland in the 60s. But I don't think that it takes away from the enjoyment in the moment, Tanner, which is where I would lean towards you, because I do find it to be not safe in the way that it's constructed in the moment, because I think that the cinematography is very irregular, and I would really disagree with anyone that says that it's poor, because I think it's actually quite great. The witticisms that we're talking about that I mentioned, that you just mentioned in the double crossing scene, it creates the vibe, and the vibes are good. I think this movie passes the vibe check.
Oh yeah,
okay,
I just don't know
if it passes. I agree.
I'm actually, I'm kind of getting goosebumps thinking about this movie. You can't really see them. Oh no, they're showing up. They're
Tucker,
showing up.
I'm gonna let you know that we can rarely ever see goosebumps when you say you're getting goosebumps.
You just have to trust me. I wouldn't hold up my arm unless I was getting goosebumps.
You know he's really feeling it when he shows us in the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my pasty white fucking skin glints off the sun.
And I'm tempted to think about Coda actually at this point, as I'm kind of starting to run on fumes as to what I still have to say about the film. But when we think about, we were talking about, Timo used the term Hallmark-like for Coda. I think that the sort of spirit of this movie and Coda are maybe not as far divorced as they might initially appear. But I think that the ways that we evoke that sort of familial feeling and the nostalgia and the playfulness is done through more interesting cinematic means here than in some of the other movies we've been watching. And I shouted it out at the beginning, but I really do love the soundtrack. And I think it adds a lot to the movie. So while I have a lot to rag on the film at sort of like that subtextual level, I think that just the A-plot, just the experience of watching it is very strong.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the cinematography? I guess Tanner, after you're
sure.
done.
But I was just gonna go on a bit of a trivia little thing here.
Trivia diversion. How about
tirade?
When Abram said that he enjoyed the Van Morrison's soundtrack, I just did a quick Google. Van Morrison himself is, of course, from Northern Ireland, as are a number of the cast members of this film. If I can run them down here a second. Writer-director Kenneth Branagh, obviously from there.
I'd like you to guess which member of the cast is not from Northern Ireland.
Oh, yeah, that'd be... Jamie Dornan is from Northern Ireland. Ciarán Hinds. Ciarán Hinds apparently, and Kenneth Branagh apparently grew up like just a mile away from one another. And both left Northern Ireland to go to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, though they never met because they were a couple years apart. But also, Ciarán Hinds, as I said, is from Northern Ireland himself, as is Josie Walker, who plays Auntie Violet. I don't know what character that is particularly, but Kenneth Branagh getting a few Northern Irish natives on board. Abram.
Is Dame Judi Dench from Northern Ireland, Tanner?
No. Dame Judi Dench is not from Ireland. She's as British as they come. She's as British as the Queen. She herself, of course, portraying and getting the Oscar win for portraying Queen.
No. Hopefully not the win.
No. She in Shakespeare in Love.
Yes, for her 3 minutes of screen time in that godforsaken film.
If I may, because this sort of leads into the cinematography, I'll do the noms here a second, because as I said multiple times now that Judi Dench is nominated for Best Supporting Actress in this. Ciarán Hinds nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Kenneth Branagh for Best Original Screenplay. This is, of course, nominated for Best Picture. We also have a Best Sound nomination. I'd like to hear some Timo thoughts on that in a moment. Kenneth Branagh nominated for Director. Van Morrison's got in there for his original song Down to Joy. And
which is what the film opens with, by the way, when it's panning over shots of presumably modern
Belfast.
Ireland. Yeah.
But 7 nominations for Belfast. Cinematography notably absent there. So, Timo, I'll throw it over to you with a fork in the road yourself. Would you rather talk about sound or cinematography?
I'm going to actually talk about cinematography because we're going to quickly talk about sound, and I think the sound is good. I think the sound in this film it serves the purpose really well. I think there's some creative moments. I maybe would want to revisit it a little bit more to really think about sound because it wasn't calling to me. It wasn't jumping out. But sometimes that's what you want with a film. So
you'll of course have to Google if this wins best sound or not because they won't be airing those at the Oscars.
Now hold on.
The goddamn Academy.
I heard something different. I just want to clarify.
Okay.
Is they are giving the awards and recording the awards and speeches before the Oscar ceremony goes live. They are editing those recorded things and putting them into the show. We will see who wins and we will see them give a speech, but it will not be live.
Okay.
Funny that they cut the editing award from the live ceremony and now have to edit these bits in. Just a bit of irony there. But Timo, cinematography, I believe.
I think I have totally come around on the ultra crisp black and white cinematography. I think it's just great. I think it's like there are so many shots where Kenneth Branagh just lets the camera sit in this meticulously crafted frame with all this beautiful production design, and you just have your characters sitting, like in specifically the scene that I'm remembering where Moira, Buddy's older friend, is like, you got to double trick them into saying, and you have to really say your product. That scene is a long scene, and it's just one shot, and there's all these people coming in and out. I think the film has so many just painterly qualities of frames. That are just enhanced so much by black and white. This film would not be as beautiful if it was in color, I think. You can just you can get away with so much more stuff in black and white cinematography, especially in lighting. You can make the lighting really crazy and do all kinds of fun and interesting stuff with it. And which the film does, and it's greatly to its benefit. I really like the cinematography, and that's a snub from the Oscars on not nominating it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to go list off a couple of my thoughts on cinematography very quickly, because I think there's one shot in particular in this movie that like always comes to mind when I think of the movie Belfast, and that is when Jamie Dornan is being at first confronted by these two like loan shark type guys that we've brought up a number of times. I don't know what their names are.
I'd call them like racketeering kind of guys. They're kind of like little like light mobsters.
Yeah, light mobsters, let's say.
And they're the Miller Lite of mobsters.
They're the pocket edition of monsters.
It is a very steep, low-angle shot from behind Jamie Dornan, and it sort of portrays him as like this column standing between these outside forces, and I think Buddy is standing right behind him. For some reason, that shot just sticks out in my mind. I'm like, that's a crazy, interesting shot. And I think what Zambarcalos and Branagh both do here in the directing and in the cinematography is take a film that could have been quite boring, quite honestly, if shot normally, and just like injected it in almost every sense, in almost every scene, with interestingly framed and composed shots. There's parts, the framing in this film is just fantastic, because I think it's in a scene where it is inside the house. It is Buddy and it's his mother, and his mother's like on the stairs, and Buddy is framed in this tiny little gap in the railing, perfectly. And it's like they could have just done back and forth cuts. They could have just filmed it top down or however. But they decided to make it a little more challenging for themselves, which I can really appreciate. And there is, of course, the numerous like long take shots where it just holds on Buddy's face or even the faces of his mother or father or other characters. I think it's really inventive and really interesting, and it gives a little extra spice to Belfast.
Yeah. Amy, have something to say about that?
I think the film is beautiful. I think it is absolutely beautiful in its irregularity. I think the shot that I love the most is when when Buddy is visiting his Gramps and Pop in the hospital. And he goes to hug him, and the camera pulls out of the hospital, and through like the frosted window, there's like this little bit where the frosting is opaque or
not opaque.
Not opaque. and you can see them just nestled in like the corner of the window hugging. I do feel like some of the cinematography, like some of the choices with color, trend in the direction of it looks cool, so we're going to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that the aesthetics are so important to the film that I can excuse some of just the showmanship of it, even if it serves no direct function, because it is that irregularity that I think that makes the movie a lot more than it would have otherwise been.
Yeah, it's the irregularity combined with variety, because there are no two shots in this film that are directly alike. I mean, you'll get close-up shots on his face, but okay, something different is going on in the background. The way that he's reacting is different, so this shot is going to be emotionally more impactful or different from another shot that is composed similarly but placed in a different situation. But for the most part, it's the framing that is just off the walls that makes this film so visually interesting. And you're right that sometimes it's like, wow, okay, well, why is the camera placed here? This looks awesome, but why? But hey, it looks awesome. And frankly, I think to me, that's the most important part of keeping me on my toes, of watching a, down-to-earth, very realistic human film that could have easily been shot, with a 3-camera TV setup, and it would have been like a sitcom. But instead, he's placing the camera in these strange situations that allow you to, have the environment enclosing around characters, or have characters filling in little pockets of the frame. Yeah. So there's always heads peeking out of corners, which serves with both of those kind of things serve a thematic angle of the film, which is this community of people who are so intertwined and all know each other and are bouncing off of each other's lives nonstop. They're like bouncy balls in a crate. And because they're literally sealed off by this makeshift wall that's keeping them in, keeping the rioters out, the community, the tight-knit community, this wall that's keeping them in, that is reflected by the cinematography, including so many people moving in and out of shots, and the camera always sitting in these strange, little eye, looking through a keyhole frames. I think it's really special, and one of the most striking visually films of the year, and I kept throughout the movie last night just getting more and more annoyed thinking of people who think this film is visually unappealing. And I'm like, what are you smoking? Watching these shots where this dark and light, he plays so beautifully with lighting using the black and white cinematography, it absolutely justifies itself in every angle, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree. You reminded Tucker when you're talking about this sort of harmony and this sort of thematic purpose. There's one other shot I wanted to call out, which I think is when the two worlds, we're talking about Buddy's world and his parents' world, collide beautifully. It's when it's Christmas night and we see Buddy asleep in taking out most of the frame, and he's got chocolate in his mouth. He
looks like blood.
Candies. Yeah, and he's passed out.
He could have been dead.
He could have been dead, but he was just eating a little bit of Christmas chocolate. And we change focus from him sleeping to the parents talking about what are we going to do? Is our marriage even going to last this long? And then the scene ends by changing the focus back to him sleeping with chocolate on his face. It really is. I maintain that some of it is very aesthetic, but some of it is also incredibly deliberate and does a lot for that storytelling.
Mm-hmm. You're going to hate me.
Also, oh, sorry.
You're going to hate me for saying it, but I think the cinematography in this film is what makes it cinematic. I think that makes it elevates the...
Ain't no way.
Why would we hate that?
There ain't no way that's too, Timo. I hate you for saying that.
See, I was right.
God damn it.
But it elevates our story, and it elevates the visual interest of the film, and makes it, beyond just your standard fare. I think the cinematography is what definitely places the film in this category of best picture contenders for me, which why it makes it all the more strange that it didn't get the nomination, and that I don't even know what arguments the people would have for coming up with why they don't.
I'm interested to just look up online and see people talking about it. But I think that it's not the only thing that contributes to the feel of this, because I think the production design is also incredibly strong.
I was going to bring that up
good.
Also.
Yeah, because it's not just that the camera is in these interesting situations and constantly surprising you with its angles, but is that it's in these richly designed, geometrically framed sets of wallpaper that has stripes on it, and just the banister choices in the house, and the 60s radios, and that little spaceman outfit he's wearing. It has this aesthetic to it that nothing else does. And I think the fact that it's presented through black and white immediately puts you in this nostalgic mindset that Abram mentioned earlier that pervades the aesthetic of this film. It's you could be watching something that was...
bro.
Yeah, you could be watching something that was made in the 60s because it has such accurate production design and feels so accurate. But then this is one of the crispest movies I've ever laid my eyes upon.
It's like you took the Apartment cinematography, which is that really nice, crisp, modern black and white, and you made it, and you just made it all
8K.
perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
It looks so good. Oh,
So
sharp.
surprisingly, no production design nomination at the Oscars either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I can feel that we're maybe winding down a little bit. But so I did want to shout out something that I paid a little lip service to earlier, but we didn't pick up on as a group of Quest reviewers, and that is performances from Jamie Dornan and Katrina Balfe. I think they're both fantastic, and honestly, maybe both should have gotten the Oscar nominations as opposed to their older counterparts.
Yes. Yes.
And because I just have a few like really powerful line deliveries in this I got some from Jamie Dornan here, where I think his character arc is really like his arc is that he realizes that he's absent from his son's lives for most of the time, and that comes to fruition in the final line where he says, "You raised them, not me, not us, you." And he thanks.
Is that the final line of the movie?
No.
Oh, that's his final.
No, the final line of the movie is focused on Judi Dench's face, saying some nonsense about
he's like,
how when you're gone, I'll miss you or whatever.
Yeah. That's right.
It's a really stupid way to end the movie.
But Katrina Balfe, I want to shout out a highlight of her performance. I think it's the scene where she drags Buddy and Moira back to the store in the middle of a riot and
what a great scene.
Forces them to return the biological the laundry flakes or whatever, because that's the right thing to do, and that's what she believes in, and she's not going to have her children or anyone her children associate with, Moira
I believe Moira's her cousin.
Okay.
Is Buddy's cousin?
Yeah. Regardless, she's a member of the community.
Uncle Frank and Aunt Violet or whatever, I believe.
Regardless,
that's who she is.
Yeah,
regardless, that's why she's always around.
She's a member of the community, nonetheless. So,
really?
she drags them back here. Back there, and she has this really powerful scene where she's like yelling at them, and you can tell that she's furious with them for doing this, but also like she's afraid for them, and all this sort of pent up aggression and stress that's been building over the course of the movie with all her background stuff and Jamie Dornan's background stuff of taxes and bills and moving and stuff like that. It all comes out very, very well. Katrina Balfe also great in the opening scene when she grabs that trash can lid and she's beating off rocks and bricks and stuff as she's carrying Buddy back to their home. Both of them very, very good. Not to say that Judi Dench and Ciarán Hinds are bad. I think Ciarán Hinds is probably better than Judi Dench, I might add. He has some fun interactions with Buddy, but I think that both of them deserve the Oscar noms over the old timers.
I would say two things, and I think I'm about spent on Belfast. First of all, any movie where we're beating off rocks is a good film. Mm-hmm. Second of all, I just was a fan of the way Tanner phrased that. Second of all, I really liked Pop a lot. I think that he's I love Judi Dench and him are fine. Yeah. But the scene where she's like, "And has your heart ever stopped before?" He's like, when you showed up in those like
the brown legging or the brown tights or whatever.
Yeah, I think that
she goes, "Good Lord."
Yeah, their relationship feels very warm in the scene where she's like, I'm taking you to the hospital and we're gonna ride the bus and all that. I think that there is a reason they were nominated, but I think that's just a more reason why the other two should have been nominated. But I also do like when Pop is explaining to Buddy how they would get the rent money back.
Yeah. That's fun.
And eventually the rent man would get in with it, and we'd give him a little cut too.
I like the scene where he's telling Buddy how to like sort of cheese his math test, where he's like, maybe she'll give you the benefit of the doubt,
and it works.
It works. Yeah, it actually does. That was a fun, understated moment of payoff, because like I missed that the first time we saw it in theaters, and I was like, the teacher's like, it was a little bit weird. Like you had some fudgy numbers, but
your handwriting was a little worse. But I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. Yeah.
What was the other thing someone was going to say?
Oh yeah, you had two things, Abram. Oh,
no, my first one was I thought it was funny. You said beating off rocks.
Of course.
That's a full point in itself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that bumps up my Belfast rating a full point.
A full point. Beating off rocks.
Can we move on to the score?
Can we just determine how many full points and how many decimal points we're going to be giving this movie?
Absolutely.
All right, I've got mine punched in. I'm ready to go. I'm rearing.
I'm ready to go.
I will say to Phil while Tucker gets his thing pulled up
I'm going.
Lord, here he goes.
I did have to turn on subtitles for this film. I could not understand the Irish accents very well. I don't normally watch with subtitles because
they're authentic.
Timo, it's because you're not listening.
No, it's because the subtitles make me listen less, man.
No. They say that. They say if they can't understand you, then they're not listening, and that's their problem. And it's your problem, Timo.
And it is my problem, and so I did the thing to solve it. All right, let's find out what this numbers is.
Okay, I put a number in.
Me too.
There we go. I punched it in.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Very similar. This is a very similar score to what was going on with Coda. 3 people are together, 1 person is out. Who is it? I don't know. But the score is 8.1. That's going to put it at the number 3 spot in between The Power of the Dog and Nightmare Alley. So the point breakdown. At the top of the list, me and Tanner tied with 8.5. We both gave it the same score. Tucker came in just 0.1 below us at 8.4. And then Abram dropped it down to 7.1. So all that rounds out to 8.1. What do you guys think of that placement?
A blisteringly low score from Abram again. Unbelievable. Thinking this is just a good movie. How dare you? How dare you, frankly?
Just a good movie?
Yeah.
I think it's a good movie. That's what I think.
I'm all right with this going at 3.
Yeah, I'd say your score reflects that, yes.
I would like to describe my thoughts, if I may, with a personal anecdote here.
Okay.
All right. Anecdotize us personally.
Here on my college campus, there's a gazebo. And this gazebo is next to a pond. And it's it's very idyllic. I want you to imagine, Timo, it's got nice Roman-style columns holding up the top of the gazebo.
I'm not going to do that.
But here's the problem with the gazebo.
Right now. Okay, what's the
problem? The gazebo
problem?
was damaged in a windstorm when we had a crazy windstorm last semester. And one of the pillars was damaged, and we learned that it's not a real column. Under the facade, under this beautiful exterior of a column, it's actually it's like a 4x4. It's just a fucking 4x4 in there. And I think that's the way I feel about Belfast. It is a beautiful movie. It's a stylish film. But when we get to the interior of it, when I get to that subtextual level, when I get to thinking about the deliberate nature of the creative choices, it's a 2x4 in there. And a 2x4, it's sturdy, but it's not the column I thought I was getting. Really, this is just a way for me to complain about my school's gazebo.
Well, I like the metaphor quite a bit, Abram. I
like it too.
But I also think it's apt. I mean, I think this movie is flashy, it's fun, it's wholesome, but it is lacking a core. That I do think that would make this, frankly, could even be a Best Picture, a real Best Picture contender. I know it's up there, but like in our minds, it's maybe a little bit back. But I think this movie is special enough, and Kenneth Branagh is a creative enough and interesting enough director in this case for this film to be better. I think it could be better, and I think it would be more interesting if it delved into its own material deeper. But it sort of sideswipes that, and intentionally so. But that definitely feels like it's lacking a core element for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I pretty much echo that sentiment. I think it's a good fun film to watch. It's short. I think that it's
very short.
I think it's
I can't understand that.
It's thought-provoking enough. It inspired me to go learn about the Troubles, so there you go. I think
that was probably also a goal of Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah, I think that the third placement that it gets is quite all right.
I don't have much else different to say. I think it's good, and maybe isn't lacking a core as much as you guys think it is. But I think it is fun and wholesome and just an all around very well crafted, very good time.
Yeah, I think it's got at least a 0.1 point more core than Tucker does.
I mean, as do I.
Tanner, what film are we going to be talking about next time?
Well, fellas, we are getting all of these sort of Oscar baity, family-friendly films out of the way here. But we're on a third in a row where we are doing King Richard next.
Oh,
King Richard.
I know that film exists. I know it's a front runner in some categories, but I forgot that movie existed, even though I've seen it.
A bit of a gray duck here in the Best Picture nominees. King Richard has a few notable nominations, namely Will Smith. It's really a Will Smith vehicle. But Tucker and I have seen this already. We saw it in theaters in November. About the King Richard, of course, for those uninitiated of us, Abram, is
I actually know this one.
Oh, he knows this one
because I like tennis, and then I found it's not actually about. It's about Serena and Venus Williams' dad, not Serena and Venus Williams. Like, why the fuck would I watch this?
They are characters in it, and they have quite a bit of screen time. But yeah, they are young women in this. The main focus is, of course, Will Smith, the Fresh Prince himself.
Yeah.
After Earth.
Okay.
Will Smith.
Well, there we go.
Just make an After Earth joke.
Did you really do that, Abram?
What?
Let's move past it.
Let's pretend like it didn't happen and move on. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we've done it. We've placed our film. We've placed Belfast at number 3 on the list. We've found out which film we're going to be talking about next. It's King Richard, in case you weren't paying attention to what Tanner was saying. I really hope you do. He often says good things.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch this film. I know that Will Smith is at like the total front runner for best actor, and so, but I haven't heard anything else about the film. What am I in for? Who knows? I guess I will tell you what I thought about it next week. Isn't that the whole name of the game?
That's the name of the game.
No, the name of the game is Quest for the Bestest.
The name of the game is tennis.
I like Abram's version. The name of the game is Quest for the Bestest. We're Backlog Boys. Keep it here on Backlog Banter for all kinds of awesome stuff. And we will see you in the next episode. Peace.
I want my colons to be ruptured from how loud that's playing in the theater that we're going to.
Did you see all the colon jokes this morning?
No.
Tanner sprayed me with his colon this morning.
Oh, colon. Yeah. Okay, I did see that.